Okay, so 3 or 4 hours work assembling the sort of main parts of this kit, and it's gone together really well. The comments are made in the when I showed the contents of the box about all the joints being hidden. To a large extent they are, but there's still room for improvement on some of the parts. So, I mean, the construction starts with the head and the mouth parts, and if I bring that up to see that, you can see the teeth are really well molded. The white you can see on that is some Mr. Surfacer that I've used just to fill some very fine hairline cracks. But the joint where it joins together, if I push that together, you can see that there's barely a join there, and by the time I've run some glue in it, because this is actually still in 2 parts, that'll come apart so I can paint the inside of the mouth, but by the time I run some glue into that joint, it'll be invisible pretty much. So I'm going to leave I'm going to paint the inside of the mouth, and then I'm going to assemble it, and I'm going to in fact I may paint the eyes as well while I've got it in pieces, but I'm then going to mask off the interior of the mouth and all around the teeth, and then the whole thing can be painted in the overall skin colour. But it's definitely easier to do do the mouth parts separate while it's still in 2 halves, particularly around the tongue as well. The only cleanup really required on this, apart from just removing the small stubs from the sprue, is the teeth all have a very fine seam line on each tooth, so I sort of scrape those off with a blade, and if you end up with any tiny little sort of hairy bits of plastic still attached to it, if you just put a little dab of liquid cement on it, it basically kills that off and gets rid of that. So there's your head part. The main part of the construction is obviously the body and the tail, and this smooth part you can see here is that internal body part that you glue together first, and then everything else gets applied in sections. Now, some bits work better than others. The tail is made up of 3 sections here, and each one of those is 3 sections itself, but the joint there is pretty much invisible. Once this is completely cured tomorrow, I'm just going to go over it with the tip of a blade just to clean off any slight marks that might be there, but overall that's looking pretty good. There's a little tiny bit of room for improvements where you can see these lines here, but it's not that they fit poorly, it's just that there's a very fine, almost like a hairline crack there. So I've basically just used this Mr. Surfacer 500 and applied it with a cocktail stick and literally just dropped it into the hole, and then under a coat of primer we'll see what that looks like. If it needs filling again, then I can refill it. I've left the legs off at the moment, mainly because I'm seaming those as well. So the legs, this is the leg that's raised as it's running, and the foot's made up of 3 pieces with separate toes, and then there's a little tiny claw attaches at the side there, and then there's a piece on the inside of the thigh. Again, there's a bit of a gap there, so I've gone over it with the Mr. Surfacer. I'll clean these up. I intend to glue the whole thing together before I paint it, but if I can work on these seams now, and then obviously these parts will be in shadow. Got that upside down, there you go. These will be in shadow when the whole thing goes together, so it won't be as noticeable. The fit of these is actually very good. If you look at the joint there, there's a little tiny bit of a gap, but if that was pressed down with some glue, that'll completely cover up. The other leg is here, and obviously that fits together, so it's standing on this foot, and this one's lifted. So it's difficult to get parts mixed up because they only fit one way. What I do find though is while I'm building it, I keep turning it this way thinking that that's the top, but that's actually the underneath, and this is the top here. So you can get a little bit confused thinking, oh, I've got it the wrong way around. There's two the little tiny arms with the claws on that fit either side. Again, they can't be mixed up because they've got these keys, and they're a really good fit. Once they're on, there's no joint there, just a bit of glue will hold those on. But again, there's some little sort of minor gaps that have filled in with the Mr. Surfacer. And the majority of it, I used just regular Tamiya cement. Where the large pins go into these holes, I did use some Revel contactor just because it stays wet while you're sort of fiddling with it, putting it together. And then I sort of went around the seam with the Tamiya. I did use a little bit of CA glue as well, just in places, just to try and tack the parts together until I could get it together and then apply the rest of the cement. So they're the main parts. Obviously the base doesn't have anything other than this piece, the badge attached to the front, but you do have to clean these three parts up, which are the posts for the electric fence. Now one of them has got these I'm assuming they're insulators, or where the power comes from, and there's some lights on the top. So this fits in the center there, and it's pitched so it sort of leans back. You can sort of see that from that angle there. So it leans back a little bit, and then there's these two smaller ones which are identical. I think they look identical, and these don't have rings on. These have just got the hooks to hook the wires over. They're a bit of a pain to clean up these, because not only do they have these hooks on the one side here, you sort of see those there if I do that. They've also got some bolt detail on the back edge, but there's a seam running right through the center of everything. So I've had to scrape all that back carefully, and I think it'll be hidden under a few coats of paint anyway, and you're not really going to be concentrating on that much anyway. So hopefully that'll look fine. I don't know whether it's intentional, but this one is perfectly straight. This one has got a bit of a kink in it at the bottom, and it was like that on the sprue. So whether that's part of the the collapsing fence, I don't know, or whether it was just bent. I'm going to leave it bent because it just adds a bit of interest. So those two pieces fit there. So you've got the three pieces of the fence, and then the other part of the base is, of course, the figure. Comes in three pieces. Let's see if I can get him in detail there. You can see his face. It does actually look like Jeff Goldblum. He's got his shades on. He's got the flare in his hand with the little flame coming out the top. I might do that in a little bit of kind of fluorescent paint or something to make it look a bit brighter. I suppose if you were insane, you could actually maybe drill a hole all the way up through the figure and somehow up through the arm and change that for a little tiny bit of fiber optic. I wouldn't bother, to be honest. That much work involved. The figure's a solid figure. It's not in halves, so it's not easy to just run that up there. But I'm no doubt somebody will somewhere. But the pose is really good, because if he's looking over his shoulder, and there's a little tiny square peg on his foot that fits in a square hole there on the base. So he's sprinting forward. He's leaning forward. And you can see that there. and he fits in it really well, actually. The whole scene. Obviously the Tyrannosaurus fits in this foot pad here. Now what's also interesting is you do get this extra base for the dinosaur, which you could actually show it without that base if you wanted to. I don't know why. However, it's going to be quite useful because while you're painting this, you can use it as a temporary stand, because I'm pretty sure once all this is glued together, it's quite well balanced, and if you push that into there, that'll probably stand up. So while I'm painting the figure, I can, handle it, paint it, whatever, and then while I'm waiting for a coat to dry, I can just pop it in there and it'll stand up on its own. It has got a use, that. And I suppose once it's finished with, you could actually fill the slot in and you've just got some little sort of dinosaur print thing. You could attach that to something. Might come in useful for something. In terms of the seams, most of it's gone together without doing any kind of special seam work. However, what I do is where there's a slight variation and I just need to sort of blind an edge out, I use this quite a lot. This is just a brass wire brush for, I think it's used for cleaning spark plugs. I think they used to sell these as well for cleaning suede shoes. But anyway, it's only a cheap wire brush. But the thing is, it's brass, it's not steel. And then where there is a joint, if there's just a tiny little bit of a sort of slightly rough edge where there's a bit of glue or something, once it's all solid and dry, you can literally just glance that over and it'll take that off. The other thing I use is this steel wool. Now, interestingly, I've been using this. It's a 4-0 gauge. I think I've got a pack somewhere. There it is. It's this stuff. It's used for French polishing, and it's 4-0. Don't use any other grade because it's too rough. But this stuff, it's almost like cotton wool, but it's made out of steel. And I've used this for years and years, maybe 20, 30 years, for cleaning seams on models. And it polishes, I obviously use sanding sticks and things like that. But once that's done, if you want to just get back that polished finish to the plastic, I use this. And it just takes the edge off, and then you just blow off the little fragments of dust, and it's super smooth. And interestingly, I've been using this for years. X Plus in their I don't know whether it's in these instructions, but certainly in one of the figures instructions, they recommend using this for cleaning seams. So obviously somebody else has been using it in the past as well. And there was a lot of sort of traffic on YouTube and stuff recently. People saying, "Oh, I didn't know you could use that," and I'd never even thought that I may be the only person that was using it. So that's quite a useful thing to have in your toolbox. So the next step is obviously to finish cleaning these joints up, and then I'm gonna get the thing together and then start painting. As I say, start with the mouth, mix up a colour for the kind of pinky reddish colour for the inside of the mouth and the tongue and the gums, and then once that's done, I'll pick out the teeth and then mask off the whole interior of the mouth, ready for the overall painting. I'll probably I'll probably prime it in black and then go over it with like a kind of earth brown colour as a base coat, and then I'll add highlights. If you look at the illustration on the box, and I don't really know, let's move that light out of the way. I don't really know if this is that accurate to the movie, because don't forget that this scene in the movie takes place in the pouring rain and at night, so you wouldn't necessarily know what colour the dinosaur was. But this has got some greenish hues to it, although it looks more brown on the video here. But the photo on the box has got some sort of greenish hues, and then these kind of mustardy colour stripes dotted about, and there's a little bit of almost like a brick red colour on the back, running up the back in little stripes. So I'll add those as well. So again, it's a dinosaur, and no one's ever seen a real one, so who's to say what it looked like? But I'll just get it till I'm happy with it, and it looks like a dinosaur to me, basically. The only real challenge is going to be the teeth and the eyes, because really you want the eyes looking at the figure, you know, because it's supposed to be following him as he's waving the torch in its face. So anyway, we'll see how we go. So I'll get to the stage where I'm almost sort of, I've got the base coats on, and I'll do another little video and just maybe paint the mouth up first and show what the mouth looks like, and then move on to painting the rest of the figure and the base, and obviously the little figure of Jeff here. So thanks for watching, and watch out for another video fairly soon.